Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Nicki Jhabvala, my pal from the Washington Post. We're recording this Tuesday, but this will air Thursday, which means the Pro Bowl voting comes out Thursday night. You can check all that out on ESPN.com. There's a little plug. And I'm sure Nicki will be writing about it for the Washington Post. Am I right about that, Nicki? You might be right
You are
about that.
correct. You
Yeah.
are correct.
And I want to get into a discussion about that in a few minutes, but let's keep on the season, just what they're doing here. First of all, I don't know that I've ever covered a season like this. And just
Yeah.
with how things have broken for a team and how like the last minute heroics and all that,
Mhm.
it's so unreal. Like, how has it been for you covering this? Have you come anywhere close to something like this?
Um, Close, yes, 2015 season with the Broncos. There were a lot of games that went down to the wire, and there would be a lot of heroics. It was usually on the defensive side, though. So yeah, it's just so fun to watch, fun to cover, fun to witness. Like it's one of those seasons where you're like hard to not appreciate just being there, you know? Like I felt that watching Peyton Manning in 2015. It's hard to not just appreciate seeing what he's doing. And seeing what that defense did. So a lot of the same feelings that I'm having with this group now, especially when you compare it to last year. I mean, you talk about like not quite worst to first, but as pretty close as you
Pretty
can
close.
get to like making that sort of jump. So it's remarkable, really.
But you know it's funny, Nikki, because I'm sure you get asked this all the time too. The difference, what's the difference now? Or how big is the difference?
Yeah.
Whatever. And I tell people it's like just even saying night and day doesn't really do it justice, how different it is. How would you describe it?
Yeah, well, for one, everybody's happy when they're winning, happier when they're winning. I feel like there's a clear mission. There's a cohesiveness about this group. The pieces fit together, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
um, I feel like all the players and coaches are all like-minded. I thought Zach Ertz really said it best in an interview a couple days last week, actually, before they faced the Falcons, where he said, um, they have a lot of talented players who appreciate the process. So when you have guys that like the practice, like want to do well, want to improve, and are also really talented, you can go for it. And you see that. You can see the incremental improvement. They're not going to win every game just yet, but that's the biggest thing. And then, of course, when you have a quarterback like that, you can go far. I mean, Washington over the years, of course, have had so many problems. It's hard to separate them all, but the fact that they couldn't get a long-term answer at quarterback was always gonna hinder them, even if they cleaned up all the other stuff, in my opinion.
Right. And for sure. And I think, obviously Jayden Daniels can cover up a lot of sins by an organization. How, and I don't want to say how good they would be without him because they have him. So that's kind of irrelevant.
Mhm.
But how good is this team, do you think? And it might be
I
a hard
mean,
question to
yeah.
answer.
I mean, I think they're good. I still struggle with the part that, they still have a tendency to get in their own way.
Right.
I mean, that's why so many games do come down to the last 30 seconds. And thank goodness they do have a quarterback who plays his best in the biggest moments. But if they could stop making the mistakes to get there, um, we'd probably see more balance in these games. So I think they're pretty good. Um, and in a league where the margin is so narrow for victory, that can take you far or it can kill you, right? I know it's so cliche, and I feel like over the last few years, it's become an annoyance more than anything when people say that it comes down to three or four plays.
Right.
But I feel like we feel it truly this season. Like if they can eliminate three or four negative plays that they have in the game, then a lot of these would probably be more closer to blowouts. I felt like the Falcons game should have, but they give up. 4 points here and a turnover here and, that kind of thing. So I think they're pretty good. It's just not fully consistent yet.
And
But I
it's
think
fun.
it all does stem from Jayden. I don't think this is a good team without Jayden. And that's no disrespect to the other players, but he makes the wheels turn.
He does, and I think it'd be hard. I think as much as anybody, I think they know what he means, and that's one of the things
Mhm.
that just jumps out is how willing they are to praise him in that way. But there is also, I think, how much do you think? Because they always talk about the bond and the closeness they have when you get in these tight games, and I think Jayden is obviously a driver of that. Does all that other stuff matter? Like, what other qualities do you see in this team that maybe in
Yeah.
those moments, I was like, Jaden's throwing to somebody, so somebody else has to catch the ball too, right? You know what I mean? So
Right.
what are
Right.
are there other qualities that you see intrinsic to this team that helps in those moments?
Yeah, I think they got good leadership. That was another thing that was lacking. And I'm too cynical. So I have always been a little skeptical about the notion of leadership. Like, you know, they're grown men. But I do think when you have, especially a young quarterback, a lot of new pieces. I mean, 60%, if not more, of their roster is new. I think it helps having guys like Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz and Marcus Mariota and Austin Eckler to a degree because they've been through stuff. They've succeeded while going through stuff. So they give a different vantage point that I think is necessary, and they kind of show the way. I think for a lot of players coming in is just one of the biggest things, and we've talked to Jayden about this, is, enduring the long season because you're coming right off the college season. You do the pre-draft stuff, then you're right into OTAs and training camp and the season. I mean, if you were in college, you'd probably be done and close to done by now. So, learning how to take care of your body, these are things that you learn from others around you, from
Right.
veterans who've been there, done that. That is important, I think. I also think too, again, winning helps. Would they be this close if they were 4-13 like they were last year? Probably not. But I do think having one clear message also helps from the coaching staff. I know that was a complaint of a lot of players, especially last year. Is you would get competing voices from coaching staff on what they need to do, what they should do, what they're looking for. That helps nobody. And I think it's been very clear from Quinn and his staff and Adam Peters on down, really, of what they want. So I think like everybody's aligned, to use a favorite word from this franchise, but I think it's true. I think everybody is sort of aligned in what they want and how they go about it, and they know they're figuring out how to win, but I think everybody has like a like mindset.
And you're right, and I think that's very important. The other thing is too, along with the guys you mentioned, like Wagner, Ertz, like those guys can still play.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that also makes a big difference because there have been times you heard in the past they might bring in a guy who's a leader. When they brought Ryan Clark in here one time to be a leader, um, I think part of it was the locker room was a little bit tougher than he realized. It wasn't as like-minded as what he had in Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
and maybe
Hmm.
they thought, well, can this guy still play? Now, Wagner and Ertz come with a different cachet, but that helps too.
Well, and what's interesting is I think Bobby Wagner aside, because he's been playing at a high level all along, but Ertz hadn't been. Austin Eckler was written off by a lot of folks. I mean, obviously he's dealing with concussion recovery right now, but before that, he was pretty dang good. So I feel like a lot of these veterans have sort of revived their career here. I think that's a largely a credit to the coaching staff on finding ways to maximize their skill set. They're not just putting, square pegs into round holes. I'm using so many cliches today. Jeez. But
If you
I
just give it
mean,
110%, we're okay.
right, right. Jeez, it's like cringy. Um, but no, seriously, you hear so many coaches talk about, oh, we're going to tailor a system to our players, and they never do. Well, they're doing it in Washington, and it's working. They're doing it well. Um, so that's part of it. I think a big piece of this is and I haven't been around Mahomes to know it, and I'm not making the full comparison. Jaden is still a rookie. But I think to have an elite quarterback, you have to have a certain quality, not just physical talent, not just knowledge, football knowledge, but a certain quality to be able to connect with and relate to everybody in the locker room. And I think that's one of his rare, like, he can charm, but he knows how to, like, he's got a humility about him too. And I think that goes a long way with the veterans. He doesn't come in acting like he knows everything, and but he also isn't standoffish to the point where it's hard to work on things with him. I think he's got the right personality for this position, really. I think Mahomes, which is the point I was trying to make, I think Mahomes has that too. I think he's one of those guys that he can take command in the huddle. He can be laid back and chill when he needs to be. He's People like him. You don't really hear bad things about Mahomes from guys that have played
No,
with him.
no, that's true. And you don't certainly don't hear anything about Daniels in that regard. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes a while for that stuff to come out. But everything with this guy has been very sincere
Yeah.
in what players have said about him, the stuff you hear about him. There's been zero pointing in any direction other than all the other stuff. And
Yeah.
when veterans like when Wagner, Ertz, and guys like Terry McLaurin, when they see a player working the way he does, that also
Mm-hmm.
resonates and that he
Yep.
gets it. Like, whether or not he's gonna, how where his career is gonna go, but he gets the work and the approach that you need to take. And I think that matters.
He's very self-aware, which I think is hard to find in 24-year-olds in general.
Yeah.
But especially for somebody who's in the spotlight as much as he is. He comes off pretty grounded, which is remarkable. So,
Yeah, no, it is. Are there, I was looking at the NFC quarterbacks. And you look over the next, I mean,
mhm.
how many, I mean, there's some quarterbacks obviously are really, established, Jared Goff in Detroit, blah, blah, blah. But how many would you even take over him at this point, to
None,
go forward?
none. I like Jared. I like Jared Goff in the system he is in. This is
Right.
not just. I feel like a system quarterback, it just carries a negative connotation,
Right.
and
I
Brock
know what you're
Purdy
saying.
gets it too. But I also think it takes a perfect storm to win and win consistently in this
Right.
league, and you have to get guys in the right system. I mean, I don't think Jayden Daniels would have the success he's having now. I mean, he's incredibly talented, but I don't think he would have all the success he's having now if he were with a different offensive coordinator or with a different head coach or with, a worse off roster. I mean, that's just the way it is. I feel like every quarterback is a system quarterback to a degree.
Right.
The good systems get the best out of them. The bad ones, I mean, look in Chicago. I don't think Caleb Williams is a bad quarterback. I don't know what he is yet, but
Right.
that system's not working for him. So at this point, no, there's not another quarterback in the NFC that would take over him. I mean, he's young. It should only go up from here for him. I think the knowledge that he came in with is remarkable. I think he's, like we talked about, the right personality, the right mindset, the right work ethic. So there's not. I can't think of another quarterback that would be better for this franchise now. And you got, you know, 4 more years on his rookie deal, three really, and then the fifth year option.
Right.
So, I mean, which is ideal when you're rebuilding. So, I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, there's not, outside of Patrick Mahomes, and you got the contract with that. There's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I would put him. I
I,
would put him sort of there.
I
Like
mean, I
it's
think
he's
and the,
early, but
right. Listen, I would too, because you're right. Like I think again, it's not just the talents, what we all the other stuff you hear about him that makes the
Mhm.
entire package worth
Yeah,
certainly for that. But yeah, there are other guys having really good years. I mean, Goff, 36 touchdowns, 10 picks, Baker, 39 and 15, Darnold, 35 and 12. But if you say like who would you rather have going forward? Well, number five, I'm taking him. And you're right, like
yeah.
there are only a couple quarterbacks where you'd say, well, if you had to trade, Lamar would be it's the guys who are being considered for
Right,
MVPs right now. Burrow,
right,
Lamar, and then Mahomes, Josh Allen, but
right.
the package with this guy is worth it. And I think it's also the way the fan base has embraced him that it's,
Right.
but the energy that he's brought here and the humility with which he's done it, I think makes him unique. And so I think I think this fan base, I think understands that they're lucky to be watching him or have him
Yeah.
on their side. And I think they really, obviously they've embraced him because it's
Yeah.
just easy to embrace. But yeah, there's nobody in the NFC, and I
No.
just look at the NFC, but there's nobody here that I would say like, oh yeah, except for this guy. Like there's nobody there.
Right.
And so, and I'm
And
sure,
and even with the top, sorry to cut you off. Even with
no,
like the top guys, Jaden has youth on his side, so
right, for
it's
sure.
a
And
selling point.
yeah, and like, there's I wouldn't put any limitations on what he can do over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I
And where
wouldn't.
he can take this franchise over the next 5 years, and
Hmm.
beyond. But I'm just doing that just kind of in increments, but there's no limitations I put on him. Would you? I mean,
No,
who knows where he
no.
can get to?
I mean, I don't. I have no limitations, no true expectations either, because I had no real expectations coming into this season, just because everything was so new. You don't know how it's going to work out. It could be great. It could be disastrous. Um, I think the second season is important for any position, but especially a quarterback. How do they continue to build on a good year one? So yeah, I think wherever he will go, the team will go, and I think that's a pretty optimistic outlook for a franchise that has been, you know, in pretty bad shape for a long time.
Yeah.
The fans earned this one.
And we don't have to get deep on this one because this will be more for after the season, whatever. But Kingsbury's been central, a big part of
Mm,
that success. We don't know what's going to happen with him. I'm assuming his name will come up.
sure.
How hot a name do you think he might be? And again, we don't at this recording, there's only one job open for sure, right? So how
Right.
big do you think he might be in the coaching search after the season?
I would imagine his name comes up if in most, if not all, whether he feels inclined to take interviews or pursue any opportunity. That's the bigger mystery. But I think if you're in search of a head coach, Cliff Kingsbury's name will come up in conversation at some point, and then how far it goes will be
Right.
up to Cliff.
And then it's like, then for him, do you have a young quarterback? You
Yeah.
see what he's done here. And here's the other thing, like, I think we all know, like, he really likes coaching here. He really loves coaching
Yeah.
Jayden Daniels.
Hmm.
And he's getting paid by the Arizona Cardinals. That's a big key.
Hmm.
But, like, I think we all know, like, okay, it's one thing to say all of this right now. And then if somebody puts an offer in front of you that's like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. You never know. So
Yep.
you don't know what's going to
Right.
happen. But I think, I think I certainly think it would personally think it would take a tremendous situation for him to leave right after 1 year.
Yep. I
So,
agree. I agree.
and who knows what that would be.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, this is so vague and wish-washy, but I also don't think I think this is the one area where coaches are not totally different from the rest of us. If somebody put a big, huge offer right in front of me, you're right,
yeah.
I'm taking it. Like
Well,
it's not like, but when you're somebody who has a leverage, when you have options, when you
right,
know another opportunity will come down, it's different. You can be more selective,
yeah.
and really decide if it's the money, if it's the situation, if it's it's up to him to decide where he wants to go in a coach. If he wants to go back into that role,
Right.
you know,
And who knows?
we'll
And that's
see.
the thing is, and I think the good thing for if you're a Washington fan, if you're this organization, again, he doesn't have to go, but also if you're going to do it again, it better be a really good situation because you may
Yeah.
only get one more shot. And again, I think we all know how rejuvenated he feels. I also think
I doubt he'd get one. I doubt he'd only get one more shot. We've seen how much this league recycles
it
coaches.
depends, but if you go to the wrong spot, that could be, you know what I mean? Like that could if you go to wherever it's a disaster, then,
Right.
but you know,
It makes it harder, no doubt.
makes it
Yes.
harder. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we don't know what's gonna happen. I just think, but to your point, he can be ultra selective and should not just
Hmm.
jump in anything. And I don't think he will. And I think one thing that Dan Quinn has done is set it up so that way if something does happen, you have a plan in place, I think, to do that,
Yeah.
where you keep some level of continuity, not just with the scheme, but with, to me, like the communication, the
Right.
knowledge, and your familiarity, the relationships. I think all that stuff matters. So, but we don't. That's for down the road.
Yeah.
Get that. Last thing is Pro Bowl voting is coming out tonight.
Isn't it this morning? I think they're announcing it on Good Morning Football.
Oh, is it in the morning? I thought they were doing it at
Yeah.
night.
The release of Good Morning Football. They usually do it at night.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thought we were told 8 at night, but who knows? All right. Well, let's take a
Oh,
step.
you
Yeah.
network would know better.
I would prefer 8 in the morning because for me that's lunchtime. So, you know,
I mean, these days, same.
well, yeah,
I
no,
wouldn't mind it.
yeah. But how many do you think? Who do you think warrants a spot from this team in the Pro Bowl?
Definitely Jayden Daniels. Um, I do think Bobby Wagner has a very good chance. I mean, he led NFC linebackers in fan voting, which is only a third of the puzzle. It's fans, coaches, players. I think he has a very good chance. Terry McLaurin's in a tough spot just because of the competition and the NFC. I mean, he's second in receiving touchdowns, right? And 12 behind Jefferson,
Mhm.
but Jefferson seems like he will get it, right? Um, so he could be a first team alternate, which is better than, I don't think Terry has been an alternate, has he? I don't think he has. So that's tough for his position because it's, not a
Tough spot.
ton. There's a Yeah, you're facing a lot of competition. You also got AJ Brown in Philly and Amon St. Brown in Detroit. So it's that one's tough.
If you,
I think he definitely deserves it, but
yeah,
who are you gonna sit to make room for him?
I think Frankie Louvu deserves.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
he would be
agree.
the other one.
Yeah. The I'm trying to think if there's Yeah, that's probably, I mean, had Austin Eckler stayed healthy, he would have been the other one with a chance, I think. But, the absence hurts him because he's, at least as a returner, I thought he would have had a good chance.
Right.
Um,
So it just
Maybe Tyler Biotish at center. I mean,
maybe.
maybe.
I think Jeremy Reeves, special teams, or like they keep bringing up Nick Ballore, like he's really good too. So one of those guys could get it. So I think
Yep.
that's another one.
Yeah.
Looking at the receivers. To your point, look at just Amon-Ra St. Brown, 109 catches, 12 touchdowns. Um, Malik Neighbors, 104 catches, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb, 101 and 6. Justin Jefferson, 110. So like there are
Yeah.
guys that have big numbers. Now I think what stands out from McLaurin, one, they don't throw as much as some of those other teams, but he's
Mhm.
also been he is like this. They don't have another threat like him, and they
Right.
piece it together. But also, I think the importance, the attention they've gotten, that maybe that helps him. I don't know. He's made some big catches that certainly would help. So, you
Right.
would like to think that he has a really good shot at that because he does. This is his having a really good season. But I think it's also some of those other guys, they get more opportunities than what he gets.
Yeah.
And so, but
Yeah. I also think the Pro Bowl is more of a popularity
yeah,
contest than
for sure.
anything. The fact that Travis Kelce got the most fan votes says all you need to know.
Well,
I
there you go.
mean,
I think you tweet out something like this to the nod to the Swifties. Yeah, for sure.
yes,
Like, yeah,
yes,
the best thing you can do is, get, be hooked, connected with a massive mega pop star.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When in doubt, make friends with Taylor Swift fans.
Yeah. So, but
Can't
I
go
think,
wrong.
yeah. So I don't know that there's anybody else like Dante Fowles had a good year. But I don't know
Yeah,
if he warrant that. I think Jeremy Chin's had a good year, but I don't know that it would get to that point.
right,
And I think Biotish has probably been their most consistent lineman, I think.
right.
So, and I think Zach Ertz will get mentioned, but among the tight ends, like I think he would be. Not, I don't know that he'd be at a Pro Bowl level. And I don't know that I don't know if he cares, but I don't know that he would
Yeah,
rise to that level in the NFC. But I think
yeah,
Jayden fits
yeah,
there, and Luvu and Terry, I think certainly have a good shot. So I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
find out. And in the end, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much it matters. I think for these guys, because I know it matters to them because doesn't want to be recognized. But the fact that they have games beyond Sunday, I think it should matter a little bit more. So I think for some of them it
You would
will.
hope so.
You,
Yes.
you would hope so.
You would hope so.
Yeah. And it is funny because like with the Pro Bowl stuff, I mean, every year there are guys who say you kind of scratch your head over. And and it's funny because it needs to be pointed out, we're not the ones voting for this. And I
Right.
go back, and this is a little aside because I talked to London Fletcher a few weeks ago, and the Hall of Fame stuff comes up, and one of the knocks on him is the lack of the Pro Bowl teams. It didn't happen until later in his career. It's like, well, that's not our fault. Like, I think more media probably would have voted for him. Those are players, coaches, and fans voting for that, not us. So,
Right.
but that's just, I don't know why I brought that up, but it's also to point out that it's like, do they always get it right? No, because there are a lot of times with players,
Yeah.
this, like they'll sit in the locker room like, well, who had the best year here? And they'll ask a teammate or they'll ask someone else. They don't always know because they're not always paying attention to everything.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I feel like the I feel like there's too much emphasis on an honor that isn't a true measure of.
Right.
It's not based on merit, really. It's based on popularity a lot of times. So, but that Pro Bowls are still included in contract clauses for
Yeah.
bonuses and like, yeah, I think some of it is sort of an older thing that doesn't really align with the current game anymore. But still cool to say you're a Pro Bowl player. I think honestly, I think the All Pro it's
It's
better,
always,
even though it's a media only award. I just think it's based on truly on performance. Usually, right, you would think.
usually you would hope hopefully more research, but I know like
Yeah.
one year D'Angelo Hall made the Pro Bowl. It was a year where he had 4 picks in one game against the Bears. It was a high profile game because he had 4 picks in one game, but I thought he had a better year the previous year and didn't get it, but he got it that year. He got so
Yeah.
much attention for the 4 picks that I think it carried him through. But there were other years I thought he was actually better, but he didn't get
Right.
the same attention because of those. So in some ways it balances out. If some guys I've seen have a really good year, they don't make it. And then they finally make it for a year that wasn't quite as
Mm-hmm.
good because you get attention somewhat for not making it the year before or whatever,
Right.
So,
Right.
but it is, it's more, listen, and the other thing is when you win, you get more. And I think this team, that's why
Definitely.
I can see this team getting several just because they're finally winning and that's what comes with it. And
Yep.
they're gonna be a lot of guys who are happy to be playing in Jayden Daniels' wake because with that comes a lot of reward
Yep.
and that's what you want. So anyway,
Which
Nick, you
should
got
make this off season very interesting. I mean, they got a lot of guys that are free agents and guys will want to come here.
oh,
So,
I mean, that's one thing. Again, we'll get into all that in the offseason, but I do think this will become that is an attractive
mhm.
play, a way more attractive place than it has been in a long, long time,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
and that'll be an off-season discussion. So anything you got coming up you want to plug? Any more food stories coming out?
No more food stories. Maybe a story coming up about a quarterback, but
Well, I look forward
just
to the
have to read
story.
the Washington Post.
Well, I look forward to seeing what's up with Sam Hartman. So I appreciate that. Anyway,
He
all
does
right,
have
Nikki.
great hair. I'm telling you, he's got great hair.
Really, nobody else has noticed that.
Yep.
All right. So there you go. We'll end on that one. Thank Nikki. Tell people where they can find you. All the good places.
At thewashingtonpost.com and on Twitter or X, whatever, at Nicki Jhabvala, NICKIJHABVALA. And no, I'm not on Blue Sky yet. I'm waiting to see if it doesn't fail before I
I
add
think
another social media to my roster.
I think you and I are among the holdouts. The alone maybe the only holdouts in there. And my life hasn't changed because I'm not on Blue Sky yet. So I'm with you. Like
We shall
I'm
see.
not looking for something else to take up more of my time on scrolling through the phone. So and also Instagram where if you want to see pictures of your baby, you can see them there.
Oh yeah, you can see pictures of my baby and my dogs. I mean, like obviously it's so much better. But yeah, if you go on my Instagram, just be warned, you're not getting football news. You are getting an influx of baby and dog photos. So
But
warned you in advance.
in fairness, sometimes you can learn things about Julian, like how he might do in the 3-cone drill down the road or something like that. So that's
Oh
somewhat
yeah.
like just
Yeah.
his quickness, in and out of the kitchen or something like that as he starts to get to walk. I think there'll be a lot to learn about him. Just, just his awareness when if you're throwing a ball in the
Hmm.
air, how is his awareness? Is he getting
Yeah.
around? So I think there's some things.
The journey to a fully guaranteed contract starts now. So he knows this.
Yeah.
So
Well, I have kids who still on a salary cap. So anyway, I think we can end all that, Nicki. Nicki, thank you very much for coming on, and hope everybody had a happy new year and have a good one coming up. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.